What's up? Dharius Daniels here, and I am back like I never left with the second video in this series of videos for things I would tell my sons about women. And in this video, I'm getting ready to tell you number 2. Let's go. All right, so let's get right to it. Here is the second thing that I think it's important for me to share with my sons regarding women. Here it is. Here it is. Look for a woman that sees emotional health as wealth. Look for a woman that sees emotional health as wealth. Now, I want you to catch this, because when I say emotional health, I'm talking about more than emotional intelligence. And I don't want to get into a deep conversation about, like, in my mind, at least, the distinctions between the two, but there is a distinction. I think emotional intelligence is where you start. It shouldn't be where you end, because emotional intelligence really at its core is about awareness and management. It is. It's about being self-aware so that there's self-management, and being being socially aware so that there is relational management. And that's important. It's essential. Nothing wrong with that at all. But when it comes to a healthy, intimate, fulfilling relationship, you need someone that's more than aware. Now, is awareness important? Yes. But you need someone that's more than aware and attempting to manage. You need someone who is pursuing more than intelligence. You need somebody that's pursuing emotional health. Because the difference between the two is, it's one thing for me to be aware of something. It's another thing for me to be taking the steps to arrest that thing, right? It's one thing to come up with strategies to manage certain things emotionally. It's another thing to get healed and whole enough where stuff isn't so much for me to manage. See the difference there? So it's one thing to, let's say if someone's got a relational issue with, like, fathers and they're triggered there. It's one thing to be aware that I'm triggered. It's one thing to have a strategy to manage my triggers. That's intelligence, emotional intelligence. Emotional health is, I do the work so I'm not triggered as much. I do the work so my triggers are not as intense. I do the work so that my triggers are not so difficult to manage. And I think it's really important in the context of a relationship I would tell my sons, listen, man, is she pursuing emotional health? Because truth of the matter is, I'm raising my sons to not need a woman for wealth. It doesn't mean that she can't bring wealth to the table. It doesn't mean that finances are not important. But it means that I'm raising my sons to be the kind of men that's not the reason you're making relationship decisions. I don't want them to make relationship decisions because of what a woman can do for them economically. If a woman can add value economically, that's a bonus. That's a blessing. Praise God. But I want them to make relationship decisions based off of what a woman does for them emotionally. And her ability to meet your emotional needs is not gonna exceed her ability to meet her own. And so I know we live in an era where people are pursuing all sorts of things. Money, cars, cribs, whatever. Not judging that. But what I would tell my sons is, the quality of your life relationally it's not going to be based on her wealth. It's going to be based on her emotional health. Because the health is going to determine how you are able to communicate. And like blood is to a body, communication is to a relationship. Think about that. What blood is to a body, communication is to a relationship. You know what blood does? I don't know if people think about this, but blood carries oxygen. Like, blood is more than blood. Blood is almost like a transportation system. People think the veins are transportation system. The veins are like railroad tracks. Think about it. Blood is like the train, and it contains so much. And so that's what communication is in a relationship. So there are things that can't get from your heart to her heart or from her heart to your heart without communication. You can't have healthy communication with someone that's not emotionally healthy, because their emotional health becomes a filter that impacts the way they comprehend everything that you're saying. Like, when that filter is there, you can say things like, I don't like that. And what that person will hear is, you don't like me. And when that filter is there, you can't out-communicate. Like, good communication doesn't fix a bad filter. It doesn't matter. Does how you say things matter? 100%. Of course. The Bible even says, speak truth, but do it in love. Bible says that when you communicate, let your communication be sprinkled with grace. Put some, like people put salt on food, put grace on what you're talking about. Yet at the same time, when that filter is bad, it doesn't matter how good the communication is. You can say the right thing, it's still going to come off the wrong way when there's not emotional health. So I would tell my sons that look for a woman that sees emotional health as wealth.
What happens when somebody thinks they're emotionally healthy, but they're basically using like their therapy as like, they're weaponizing their therapy?
I thought you was about to say something else. I thought you were about to say, what do you do when somebody swear they're emotionally healthy and they're not?
That's what I'm saying.
That's a different situation.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that could be kind of tough, but, and I know maybe this is another video, but to me that's another trait, right? And that is, I think it's really hard to have a good relationship. I think it's hard to have an amazing relationship with an arrogant person. And arrogant isn't always narcissist. I think when we think arrogant, we just always think men. Arrogance is not gender specific. You can be a woman to be arrogant. And that doesn't mean you're a narcissist, but it means that you got blind spots that you're unable and unwilling to acknowledge. It means you have overestimated your growth in an area, and you won't allow the people in your life to be a mirror to help you see blind spots. And so when a person because this is a real thing, like when a person thinks they're more healthy than they are, the only way that's addressed is if they have the trait of humility and they allow you to be a mirror and to help them see some things that they could not see about themselves. So, like I said, that's really something completely different, because you can't make someone see something they don't want to see. And this is a completely different conversation, because sometimes people's unwillingness to see is evidence of their emotional health. It's like their lack of emotional health. It's like, yo, you just won't see. And a lot of times people can be in therapy and they think being in therapy means emotionally healthy. That's like me saying being on a treadmill means I'm in shape. Not really. Like it means I'm intended, but it's not the intention, it's the outcome. Am I working the treadmill the right way? Is it getting my heart rate up? All of those kinds of things. So sitting in a room with a therapist, I want to be honest about this. Therapy only works to the degree of your honesty. So I'm not even I think therapy is important. I go to therapy, I get it, but it only works to the degree of your honesty. So a person can be like, I'm seeing a therapist. It's like, but are you being honest? So yeah, I think for it to work, that person's got to have humility, and they need to see relationships should be a mirror to help me see some things about me I couldn't see.
Say if you're in therapy, you are open and willing to have that mirror and everything, but now since you've been vulnerable with your partner and you share this challenge that you're facing, now they want to keep throwing it in your face.
Yeah. And people do that though. People will use your vulnerabilities against you. You know what that's evidence of? That's evidence of a lack of emotional health and intelligence in them, right? Because if you're practicing vulnerability, you know how fragile that feels. Like if you opening yourself up, even to like a therapist, then you know how that feels. So when someone, especially that you're in a relationship with, open themselves up to you, you know how it feels to be in that position, so you don't treat people that way. This is really hard, and this is why like, I'm such a stickler for this, and I say this all the time, like, sometimes it takes relationships to expose certain things in people that wouldn't get exposed any other way. And in a situation like that, where you can't be vulnerable, you have to make a decision. Is this the kind of relationship I want to be in? Now, if you choose to be in that relationship, that's not wrong. That wouldn't work for me. That's not safe. I got to have safe people. And so for me, I would have to set a boundary there. If that person's unwilling to grow in that area to allow me to be vulnerable, then that's not a person that I would recommend anybody consider being with long term. Emotional health is wealth.